Well, Stage 5 could help Darwin Atapuma become the first race leader to last for more than a day. Not that there won't be a breakaway, but the terrain should make it a controllable one. Just one third category climb on the 171 kilometres from Vivero to Lugo, and plenty of time to wind up for a bunch finish on what's an uphill drag to the line.
Through 10 kilometres they go, and the pace is now very high as Hugh Carthy is in a little group there, just in danger of getting detached from this increasingly strung out and fast moving peloton, and they head towards the finishing line. Louis Verkerke, the climber from Lotto Soudal, one of two GC riders, Bart de Klerk as well, probably exempt from lead out duty as they try and set things up for Tosh van der Sande, unless they've got a rider, and they are one of the teams as well, who might be able to launch a long attack. But to attack off the front of a peloton that is moving this fast, David, on these kind of roads is almost a physical impossibility.
At this moment, yes, but once it does narrow down and start to go up slightly, which we'll see become a bit more technical, then that's the opportunity to go. And they'll all know that, but you can't have the opportunity unless you're well placed, hence why all the teams are up there positioning to make sure when it does get a bit more complicated, they're ready to go. It looks like Tyler Farrow's then taking the position, so they're following the same tactic as they did on stage 2.
There's Hugh Carthy, the British rider, at the back, and I caught a glimpse of another British rider quite close to the front of the race at the moment, and that's Scott Thwaites for Bora Argon 18, one of 3 Bora Argon 18 riders on the left-hand side of the road, right at the front of the peloton. Last time we saw them, and none of those, I don't think, was the man who finished second on stage 2, and that was Michael Schwarzmann. There they are, the Bora Argon riders with the red helmets. Very, very similar kit, don't get them confused. The giant Alpecin kits, they've got that little blue trim, and they are towards the centre of the peloton. But the other black train, there they are with the red helmets. That's Bora Argon 18, and the rider in second wheel there is the British rider. Actually moved to the front now. I think that's Scott Thwaites on the front, but he's there, which is interesting, and he declared overnight to the press that he doesn't want to be in the Vuelta here just to make up the numbers. Was in the breakaway yesterday, and he's a rider who can sprint. You
saw the giant rider there really doing a frantic flicking of his elbow, indicating that he is going to have to get off the front. You see him going back through, because if he waited too long for teammates to come through, he'd find them all getting swamped up. So he had to make sure that it was clear that the guy had to come over the top of him there and then.
Tinkoff take things up with 3 riders on the front. They're setting the pace on the right-hand side of the road now, 7.5 kilometres remaining, and you can see how much more of these wide roads they've still got. Wide and straight, but in the distance, behind that athletics track there, that's where they come off the main road, and all of a sudden 4 carriageways will go down to 1.
Yeah, they'll have it narrowed down there, then I think it does then merge back onto a fairly big road, but already that's going to set the tone slightly.
Well, perhaps that's a slip road that will take them round onto a wider road again, but there is a pinch point coming up, and that's why Tinkoff and Sky are battling for position there.
And there is Bonatti on the front, so as we said, this really is where he excels. He's got the power, because having been a sprinter, and the know-how to position himself well, and he's just looking after his team leader, making it look so easy compared to everybody else.
Contador doesn't look comfortable, does he? Once again, the teeth are out and he's grimacing, and just looks a little bit below par at the moment, Alberto Contador, even in stressful situations like this that aren't climbs, but normally you see him negotiating absolutely flawlessly. Just looks a little bit under pressure.
Well, we have to remember as well, he is a pure climber, really, and he's on the wheel of Daniel Bonatti, who's an ex-sprinter, who makes it look really easy, but he's probably just put Alberto Contador in the red, completely trying to move him up there and get him in that safe position. But I said it's better to put yourself in the red and be in the safe position than be behind comfortable.
Chris Froome is about 5 or 6 positions further back from Alberto Contador. There he is with the elbows in his customary wide position, about 5 or 6 riders behind the 2 Tinkoff riders who are leading the way, Daniel Bonatti and Alberto Contador.
In total control, Daniel Bonatti. It's very impressive. You can see how it's stringing out, and this is why they had to position well, because they've gone from that massive road, the pinch point, as he said, and now it's down to one long line, so any incident could cause gaps here, so that's why it's so important for the GC riders to be up the front. Pete Kenyon there moving up slightly, so Team Sky well represented. Dimension Data are looking around to make sure they're in line. Lotto Soudal have 3 or 4 riders there, so we're seeing Moby started, but still BMC, we don't see, there's no real organisation to them.
Jarko Ventet, who's the rider from Dimension Data, who you just caught a glimpse of looking around there with a white helmet, and once again he looks around. He's of no use to them there. I mean, he's just making up the numbers in an otherwise GC train. He needs to drop back, find the rest of his team, and then put himself to their service.
Well, it's always often, if you find yourself up there, you stay there and they have to get up to you, because the effort you'll make dropping back and coming, it's better for them to try and wing it and use the other wheels to get up to you, because that's always the hard bit, is being at the front. And it's a mistake that many lead-outs do, is they lose their team leader and they then drop back to get them when the team leader could have made it up using other teammates to get up there.
Well, he has he's dropped back a few positions now, and it's up to Tyler Farah and Christian Sperali, I think, or possibly Nathan Haas as well, to get onto his wheel. Meanwhile, Direct Energie have a couple of riders moving up on the right-hand side of the road. Team Giant Alpecin with 3 or 4. Nikias Arndt is visible there with the aero helmet, the closed helmet. The rest of them have vented helmets. Look at that red closed helmet a little bit further back. And now Team Sky have control of the front of the race with, I think it's Kwiatkowski, is it, and Pete Kenyon not too far behind.
Yeah, Bernat, you can see, was pulled off, which is great. He's done his job. 5Ks to go 2Ks until the pseudo safe zone of inside 3 kilometres where times are taken if there are incidents. But you can see behind how it's all splitting up, which is the reason you need to be at the front for a GC rider, because if you get caught out behind these things at this speed, at this point in the race, it's very, very difficult to close a gap. My
outsider tip for the day was Astana's Gatis Mukulis. He's in that group just off the back, so he's not going to be winning. He was one of the riders I thought might try to launch a long one today, but that was wrong.
One of your exciting long shots.
This is going to be a bunch sprint, I think. The time is running out for riders to... and the pace is simply too high for riders, even on these narrower roads. They're still too wide, and it's just impossible to attack off the front of this kind of pace.
Adam Hansen now on the front for Lotto Sudal. So he would have been a rider at his best that could try and make a late attack. But look how reduced that is already, the peloton. There's quite a few riders that have been caught out and sat up. And as you heard, Rojas from Movistar moving up. Pete Kenyon's doing a good job of fighting there, holding position. Dimension Data are there, trying to just make sure they don't get swamped. We haven't seen much Foraker bike exchange, but look at that. That's been significantly reduced, that peloton.
Well, hopefully none of the GC riders have been caught out the wrong side of that. Look to see if there are any concerted teams trying to drag GC leaders back onto the the coattails of this peloton. I don't think there are. I don't think anyone's too badly caught out, but the road is going to rise a little bit. According to the profile there's a little bit of climbing to be done within about 3 to 2 kilometres from the finishing line. So fairly soon, and now it looks like they're hitting a bit of a climb, and Rojas leads them onto it.
And this is often, if you're going to try and do the attack, and this is how Paulini and Vinokurov did it back in 2006, you let all the teams cause all the stress here on the slight uphill, and then when it gets to the top, there's no descent, there's a plateau. When there's the lull, then to do the counter-attack. But the speed they're going at is going to be hard for anybody to do that.
Over to the right-hand side now, Chris Froome being shepherded safely to that position. I caught a glimpse of Esteban Chavez very, very close to the front. There you can see him with the green helmet and the blue kit, so he's another GC rider thinking about the 3-kilometre banner, and they go under that archway now. So if there is a mechanical or an accident that affects and creates a split in the peloton, they will all be given the same time. That said, if a natural racing split occurs, well, a natural racing split occurs, so they still need to be on their guard not to lose any seconds on this climb, has to be said. This little ramp that they're going up now.
I see riders pulling off at the front there, just going too far in the red. Their work is done. Alberto Contador strangely isolated. We see his bobbing style. There he is, just on the inside of the corner. But he's got no teammates around him.
Gilbert's looking ominous, isn't he? As if he fancies a move on the right-hand side of the road, and there he is. And he takes with him is that Simon Clark, a Cannondale rider, goes with him, and Gilbert and one of the Cannondale Drapac riders are off the front and attacking. So the predicted attack from Gilbert, or you might have imagined from Gilbert, has materialised.
And this is the perfect incline. I'm not sure who that rider is from Cannondale, but he's very strong to go with Gilbert and then counter him. And I think that caught Gilbert slightly off guard. I think he thought he had the peloton on the wheel and it came by, but then realised that they had a gap. So now it's on, and this is the perfect situation for Gilbert, because tactically he's very astute. If he can get onto that wheel, he can then play his cards, and normally he gets his cards right.
David, I'm wondering if that's Patrick Bevin, a rider we don't know too much about from Cannondale Drapac. It might well be him. Either way, it looks like Gilbert is getting onto the wheel of the Cannondale Drapac rider, and this is perfect for Gilbert. If he can just latch on there, recuperate temporarily. Well, actually, it's not Bevin, it is Simon Clark, as I thought initially, and Gilbert goes round him. So there they go now. It is Clark and Gilbert has dropped the Australian, but two very strong riders entering a wall of noise now in Lugo through 2 kilometres. What sort of an advantage do they have over the chase? How organised is that chase? And which teams are working? That's a gap.
Well, this is good as well, because if his team's
crash.
Crash.
That's Kruiswijk. That is Kruijswijk. He's gone down and he is lying on the ground and he's clutching his collarbone, and that looks bad for the leader from Lotto Jumbo. In the meantime, a little bit of cat and mouse from Clark and Gilbert.
They can't afford to play any cat and mouse now. The two of them, they may as well be on the same team. They have to be absolutely give everything they have, because at the moment, from what we saw before, we need to see back because Team Sky is still chasing. Team Sky aren't so Team Giant, so now they are interested in the sprint, but there's not many teams left, and that's why it's good tactic by Gilbert to go as we see Ethics Quickstep move up on the right.
Up alongside those old city walls of Lugo now, a famous location on the Vuelta and a famous rider leading up Simon Clark towards the finishing line. Gilbert and Clark, both of whom have scored big victories on Grand Tours, of course, as Kruijswijk continues to get a little bit of attention in the company of Robert Hessink as well. And that's not good for Lotto Jumbo, so we'll keep an eye on that. But in the meantime, there is a race developing at the front, and it's over for Philippe Gilbert and for Simon Clark as Astana bring it all back together.
Sanchez. I think Luis Leon Sanchez was trying to attack himself slightly and try to check it, because again, this is the sort of move that he knows. And they'll have all looked back on the stage in 2006 where Paolini and Vinokurov went, and it was just here inside a kilometre ago that they broke free at this lull moment after the chase up the climb. So it's up to now to see if there's anybody up the front, because they'll monitor and see if the team strong enough to control it, and if there isn't, you go.
I tell you what, I think that Gianni Meersman is there. Certainly Kevin Reza is from FDJ, and he fancied today. He was very public about that. He's in fifth wheel, the rider from FDJ, the Frenchman, and Gilbert is leading them all out, and they're going to get swamped at that pace as a bunch of riders try and get level with them at the very front now. They're in the barriered section, not far to go now, and Gilbert attacks again.
I think there was a crash there. Somebody's caught a wheel. I'm not sure if they went down. It was slightly off camera, but there was definitely something happened, which again is going to cause gaps behind.
Zdenek Stibar leads Gianni Meersman towards the barriers as they gear up towards the finishing line now. Right-handed they go. Jempi Drucker is there from BMC trying to go the long way round. Luis Leon Sanchez is still there.
I can see the gaps have opened up, so that crash must have done something. Chris Froome, and it looks like just coming past Phil Gilbert with Samu Sanchez on his wheel.
Yeah, Froome is doing battle just to make contact with that group, but at the front end it's still Stibar who leads the way from Meersman. Now Meersman tries to go round him. He's got one of the Trek Segafredo riders for company there. I don't think it's Bonifacio, but Meersman has this under control as they continue to pile towards the finish line. I don't think anyone's going to get to Meersman. They're not. It's another win on the Vuelta for the man from Ethics Quickstep. Gaps all the way down the final few hundred metres of this, well, very dramatic final few kilometres. Damaging for so many riders, Stephen Kruijswijk included, but well, that's another great ride from Ethics Quickstep.
And here is that crash that's blocked the whole road. It's we see as Chavez just getting help by his mechanic. I don't think this will have any effect on the GC because it is so close to the finish, and that group was together before the crash, but we can see it has had a massive impact on the race there.
Well, there is this is what happened. Now let's have a look at this, David. What's gone on there?
So if you see here on the left, you see the white jersey of Dimension Data, and he's got a green jersey of Caja Rural just on his left. Now on the inside again, here you have, I presume it's Nicky Asana, sprinter from Team Giant Alpecin coming through, but watch now, the front bunch just comes across, and that Caja Rural rider, and then green jersey gets crushed, and that's it. He can't hold himself up. He goes down, Direct Energy rider gets taken down. Somehow the Dimension Data rider, watch this, unclips and manages to stay up. But then we don't see the aftermath behind until what we just saw. It blocked the whole road. Well,
we're going to have to see how that all pans out. We know that the red jersey of Darwin Atapuma was delayed over the line, over a minute down on the winner. Let's leave that with the commissaires. No doubt about the man who passed the line in first place, though. Once again, Gianni Meersman.
Well, before we confirm the result, let's revisit the injuries. Lotto Jumbo Stephen Kruijswijk was taken to hospital to see whether he'd broken his collarbone, which is what the medics on the ground seemed to think from the way they strapped him up. And not long afterwards, his teammate Bram Tankink identified what had brought him down by tweeting a shot of this bollard, which is to say what brought him down was the organisers' failure to remove it. You can see it here when Simon Clark was on the attack at 2.2 kilometres to go. A lockable bollard in front of somebody's garage that could easily have been unlocked, except that it wasn't, and one of the pre-race favourites is now out. The other larger crash was a more run-of-the-mill affair, not that that will have made it any less painful for Direct Energy's Tony Aurel or Tinkoff's Robert Kieselowski. They both finished, unlike Kruijswijk, and Kieselowski headed to hospital for x-rays, so Alberto Contador might be missing a key mountain helper. Right, back to the stage result then. Fabio Feline was the Trek rider who pushed Gianni Meersman close, with Kevin Reza third, and Alejandro Valverde the furthest forward of the favourites, well out of trouble in sixth place. Nairo Quintana and Chris Froome came in 13th and 14th, slightly behind the sprint group, but on the right side of the split. All the other big names were held up. Of course, they were given the same time because the crash was inside the final 3 kilometres, but better to be in front of trouble than behind or alongside it. Well, being on the same team as Marcel Kittel inevitably limits a rider's chances in the Grand Tours, but Gianni Meersman has taken both of his so far on this Vuelta.
I was extremely happy with the first victory, but I don't know, it gave me a lot of confidence, and I start today with really zero stress, nothing. Everything was good, and what the lead out that Stibar did was incredible, and then I just saw the sign of 200. And I knew if I don't start, the other guys would come from behind. And I rather do my own sprint that they pass me, than I'm not closed in. But yeah, nobody passed me, so I'm really happy.
As was Darwin Atapuma eventually, after the Spanish host broadcaster had corrected the graphic showing Alejandro Valverde as the new race leader, the red jersey presentation was able to go ahead.
No, la verdad estaba tranquilo porque se sabe que siempre cuando hay caída al final es el mismo tiempo. Yo he mirado la caída que estaba en el último kilómetro, pues he estado tranquilo. Y sí, al final hemos tenido que esperar un poco al podio, pero bueno, contento de poder tener y seguir manteniendo este liderato que para mi carrera deportiva y para mi equipo de verdad es una felicidad muy grande.
¿Has pasado algún susto en estas caídas de final de etapa o las has librado bien?
Sí, me asusté un poco porque la caída fue un poquito delante mía, entonces pensé que si yo frenaba a alguien me podía tocar de atrás, pero gracias a Dios todo ha pasado muy bien, no me he caído y he podido continuar sin problemas.
So, after all that, no change at the top of the standings. Atapuma keeps his 28-second lead over Alejandro Valverde, and the time gaps between the other big names remain the same.